opinions in this one might be more controversial than my worst reads. I feel like I'm really channeling Jordaline today with the sleeve moment and the lips and literally her wig. Hey, what's up? I'm Allie and welcome back to my channel. It is that time of year again when I tell you the most surprising and best reads for me from the previous years. I will have a link down below, so if you want to see a list of my most disappointing and shittiest reads of the year, you can find that. But we're really going to talk about the good stuff here. So, I do feel like I have a bit of an unpopular opinion on a lot of these, which is interesting because I feel like normally I'm the one who hates the things that everyone loves, but it seemed like I loved a lot of things that people hate this year. So I am going to section this a little differently than I have from previous years. And first, I am just going to talk about like the top 2 of series type things, and then we're gonna get into like an actual list of like my 10 favorite reads of the year that surprised me in some way and I just really enjoyed. So the first category with the series, just to get them out of the way, because I feel like these are things that I've talked about and have continued or whatnot. So first we have the top 2 series that I continued in 2021 and really enjoyed the sequels of, one of which was Storm of Locusts, which is the sequel to Trail of Lightning, and I just thoroughly enjoyed this world. It is an apocalyptic world, but it also has Navajo mythology mixed in, where basically the gods come to life, and we follow Maggie, who is a demon slayer, and she is sassy and badass, and I love her. She's amazing, but she has to team up with a medicine man who is very attractive, and they have to hunt down some of these myths and monsters in order to basically live a peaceful life, because Maggie has some trauma and she has to work through that, and she just kind of avoided it by killing monsters and whatnot. But the second one obviously follows the events of the first one, and it's so good. This world is so good. This writing is so good. I love these characters so very, very much, and I hate that I have to keep waiting to figure out what is going to happen next, but these are so good. I love these covers. I also love the UK covers. They're just amazing, beautiful, lovely. I cannot stop recommending these. And then the other one that I continued was Kingdom of the Cursed, which is the sequel to Kingdom of the Wicked. This was one of my favorite reads from 2020, so this came out in 2021. I continued it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had a good time. So these are probably my top 2 series continuers. This is a really fun series, honestly. Like, is it the biggest masterpiece of all time? No. It's just a really good time. We follow a character. Her twin sister has been murdered, and someone is going around murdering the witches in her town and ripping out their hearts, and her sister is one of them. She ends up accidentally summoning a prince of hell, but he's also interested in figuring out who murdered her sister, so they team up. The thing is that they hate each other, but it's a hate to lust kind of situation, and it's just a really good time. I do have my reasons for loving this series, so also within the series category, I have my top 2 series that I started this year, and I actually finished this one, but that is We Hunt the Flame, and I went ahead and just finished off the duology with We Free the Stars, and this was so good. I feel like I saw a little bit of hype going around about this, and then it died, and then I didn't see anyone talking about it, and I just feel like we need to keep talking about this because it's so good. Oh, YA fantasy romance. This is a hate to love. This enemies to lovers. This is it. I love this world. It's amazing. It's lovely. Anyway, this I feel like I'm not even going to be able to properly describe this, but this is about a girl who women aren't allowed to like do anything in her society, and so she is disguised herself as a man, and she is like famous in her town. I mean, they think she's a man, but she's famous in her town because she can go into like this magical forest that basically kills everyone else who enters it, but she can somehow go in, hunt game, and come back and provide food for her town, and she's the only one who can do it. This catches the eye of some pretty important people, and they task her with going and hunting down, because she can just hunt things so well, hunting down this, like, magic, basically. Magic is missing, and there's this world that's kind of set apart from everything, and they send her. However, once she finds the magic, they basically want her dead, so they send an assassin to follow her. And of course he's handsome. And of course he's got a sweet spot for her. And of course it's amazing. But there is magic mixed into this. There are unlikely friendships. I love the found family-ness that is happening in here. And I really hope that there's a spin-off following 2 characters in this, because I need more. I need more. I love this world. I'm interested to see if this author comes out with anything else around this world. But yeah, really great duology. I flew through it, and as you can tell, I also thoroughly enjoyed this as well. And then the other top series that I started is These Hollow Vows. This is also going to be a duology, I believe, and then the second one comes out this year. So this is about a girl whose sister gets sold to the Unseelie King, and in order to get him back, she has to try to seduce the Seelie prince, but at the same time she has also been in contact with an Unseelie rogue, and both of them are handsome, and both of them are charming, and both of them are amazing. So, like, what's she gonna do? What's she gonna do? There's a lot more to the storyline than just that. There's some, like, pieces that she has to find. There's some war going on. There's some magic involved, and it's a good time. Again, is it a masterpiece? Not necessarily, but it is so fun. It is sexy. I just love fae stories. What can I say? And I'm always rooting for the bad boy. So if you're looking for a series that is a really quick read, fast-paced, it evokes a lot of emotions. It's not necessarily the most surprising read, but it is a bit of a comfort read for me at this point. Any fae story is kind of a comfort read. This is so good. I've also thoroughly enjoyed this one as well. The best of my reading, and I do actually have an order to this. So coming in at number 10, we have Beautiful Darkness. This is a graphic novel. I always have to include a graphic novel because I feel like a lot of people actually know me for graphic novel recommendations, so here we go. This is a deeply disturbing graphic novel, but it seems so pleasant. This is basically, like, it took me the first few pages without realizing that, like, these are, like, tiny people who have been living inside of a little girl, and the little girl is murdered, and they have come out, and now they don't know what to do because they have to live out in the wilderness. But this is a great look into humankind and the lengths that they will go to in order to be self-serving, and it is terrifying, it is creepy, but it is kind of told in this, like, magical fairy looking-esque artwork, which just really is a really nice juxtaposition between the two. We got this, like, cute artwork and then this really deep, dark message. But this is gruesome at times. It talks about just murder and mayhem and thievery, and just, it's dark, but it is amazing, the message it was trying to say, and I thought it conveyed it really well and in a really powerful format. So it's a really quick read, and it is stunning. If you can find it, because I had a hard time finding a copy of mine. I had to get it through the library, but it was still kind of hard. If you can find it, give it a try. There's going to be a decent amount of horror on this list. I feel I really found horror this year and was testing out horror and really getting into horror this year. So number 9 is Nothing But Blackened Teeth. Now, again, I've seen a lot of mixed things about this book, but I absolutely loved it. This is more of a novella, and this is about this group of friends that go to have this wedding at this, like, abandoned mansion pretty much, but this mansion is, like, known for people dying. People have died there, and it is basically built on the dead bodies of brides. So naturally, we're gonna go have a wedding there, right? So this group of friends goes, and they're kind of like hunting for this, like, legend, essentially. Like, they're there for the thrill of it. I was not expecting this to have so many like slasher movie and horror movie references and being like making fun of them in the moment, but also making it incredibly creepy as they were like living out this horror. So I loved it. I love that there's like a little bit of magic involved. I love that we get to see like this legend that is around it. And I loved seeing their different reactions and how they handle the situations. And basically they're like, oh my God, this is what they would do in horror movies, but what do we actually do in this moment? Because I feel like a lot of us say that. Like, we could be like, why would they do that? That's so dumb when we're watching a horror movie. But if I was ever in that situation, I'd probably panic too, you know, and just do whatever. So I thoroughly enjoyed this. It was a really quick read, obviously, because it's really short, but it's also paced really well, and I felt like we got enough information within it, and it just felt done at the end. Sometimes that is my problem, is that they don't feel totally completed, but this felt like a complete story, and it was just really enjoyable. I always try to read short story collections every year, and one that I read this year that has really stuck with me and was really impactful when I read it is Friday Black. This is a collection of stories that are based around being Black in America and in a capitalist society, and it is so fascinating. The stories each have their own voice, but in a way also feel very interconnected and interwoven. And there are some that are like they lead back and forth to each other, but it still felt like a cohesive collection. Sometimes when I read these, they feel like too just disjointed, but this still felt like collective, and I could really hear the author's voice in every story. There's also a really good mix of like mythology in some places, and then fantastical elements, and then some of it's very modern, and some of this was like traumatizing to read. I cannot even imagine what it would be like for someone of color to read these stories and relate to them, because this was just, some of these stories were gruesome. Some of them I totally understood where they were coming from. Some of them felt like Black Mirror episodes. They were so intense, and the author does not give you a moment to like breathe. It is one thing after the next, and each story has just such a strong message in it, and then there's some where you can read them and get several different meanings of it. Lots of satire, especially about the capitalist society that we live in, and it is just so good. I cannot recommend this enough, because I do think that there is a story in here that could probably relate to anyone's reading taste. There are contemporary stories, there are horror stories, there are kind of sci-fi stories. I will say there is a decent amount of gore in pretty much all these stories, so just a heads up. It is dark, it is captivating, it is impactful, and it just really like cuts through ya. Cuts right to it, you know? For nonfiction, I tend to love things that are about nature. And I ended up reading A Life on Our Planet this year by Sir David Attenborough, who is fantastic. I love, you know, any animal documentary, I'm all on it. So this was really interesting. I just like the insight of this. It is basically just about, it's a little bit about David Attenborough's life and a little glimpses into that, and how he has kind of come to learn the things that he has and the different cultures and whatnot, and just about different animals. But it's really about where our planet is going when it comes to global warming and the resources that we have. And it isn't just like, hey, these are the things that are happening. He actually provides some of the things that he thinks would help these situations. It's not, I feel like sometimes the issue that I have with these types of things is that they just like are like, these are the issues, that's it, and they don't like give anything that people can do to help necessarily, except for like donate to this thing. So I like that there was actual like solutions to some of the things. Well, not necessarily solutions, but like possible things to help. And it wasn't just like, here the main things. There was a lot about like farming and food that I never even thought about. So it's just really tackled a bunch of different topics, and I know that this is technically pretty surface level, but I do think it's a really great introduction into kind of what's happening with the earth. It's a little scary. It stressed me out. I'm not gonna lie, but I did think that it was very understandable. It was very clear what David Attenborough was trying to say, and I really could grasp it and sit and think with the information that he had provided. And I thought it was really enjoyable too. I love listening to anything David Attenborough does, so if you can get the audiobook, I would highly recommend the audiobook. It's just so good. Next, we have another surprising horror book. I can't stop thinking about this one. It has really like gripped onto my brain and it's not letting go. And that is Suffer the Children. And I have to thank Jordaline for recommending this because I don't think I would have picked this up on my own, especially because like originally you hear children vampires and it's like, okay. But this is so much more. And I think the way that this was done brilliantly. It was written so incredibly well. And it is more of a slow-paced book, but it works with the story that is being told. So at the very beginning, all the children in the world are dying. They're dying, and the parents can do nothing about it. So all the children suddenly die. So it's a few days later, and the children start coming back to life. But of course they are changed. Something has changed in them. And this really isn't so much a story about these children becoming vampires. This happens pretty early on. This is more about the parents and the lengths the parents and adults, the lengths that they will go to in order to keep these children. It is a bit of a dystopian and a downfall of society because obviously these children need blood to survive now. But that's a pretty limited quantity. You can only give so much yourself, and then you have to start looking at outward sources. And it's rough. This is gruesome and it's brutal, but what is really genius about it is just like the thoughts, the inner monologues of like the parents in these situations. And we follow several different parents in a variety of situations and the lengths that they will go through. And what is most impressive, I think, is that we have seen the parents already lose these children once, because I don't think the story would have been as impactful if it just jumped into the parents looking for blood, essentially. But because we have seen their pain, because they have lost these children before and they don't want to suffer that pain again, because we now have a better understanding of that, it makes so much sense. And like, sometimes you're in those moments and you're like, do what you gotta do, you know, like, yeah, you go do that. And it's like, am I the bad guy? Like, because like no situation turns out good here, but it is a really just creepy tale. It sneaks up on you in just how wild this is and how disturbing it is, but it was a really brilliant story. If you want to read a creepy dystopian vampire novel that is unlike anything else, this is it. This is probably one of the most unpopular opinions. I have this as one of the best reads of my year, and that is the Final Girl support group. And I know so many people have hated this book, and I don't understand, because this was amazing to me. To be fair, I really, really enjoy Grady Hendrix's writing. I know a lot of people complain about the way that he writes characters, but I love it. I eat it up. And I've seen some people say that he doesn't do a good job at like differentiating the voices in his story, but I just really disagree. Each of these people felt so realistic and so like someone I could see out walking on the street, or someone I know, and I could picture each of them with their own lives and their own struggles and things like that. If you don't know, this is about a group of women who are final girls who meet basically to discuss their lives. This talks about basically, you know, after they've been in the headlines and the media has cashed their money on them, how they have to continue living their lives and the trauma that they have to live with for forever, and what that means and how that affects their daily routines and the things that they do and their mental health and things like that. So I feel like I read a lot of final girl books, but none that really talk about that part. It's not like they don't touch on the aftermath, and this one really talks about that and like the different ways that they are aware of things that like most people would never think about, and the ways that they try to keep themselves safe, or the ways that they kind of self-destruct in a way. So I loved hearing all their different stories. It kind of has nods to slasher films, popular slasher films and whatnot, and you can kind of guess where they're coming from, but without it being like a blatant kind of reference to something. So I liked that. This also has one of the creepiest scenes I feel I have ever pictured in my mind, and it has to do with like a museum. So creepy. I loved it. It gave me chills. This audiobook is really long. I think it's like 17 or 18 hours, and I listened to it in one sitting because I had to know what was going to happen. This is like part mystery. It's mostly suspense, to be honest. I wouldn't even necessarily categorize this fully as horror until much later in the story, but this is definitely suspense. I mean, it is like back to back to back to back. Our character is running for her life because in the support group, someone dies and the rest of them are under attack. So someone is trying to kill them off now, and they have to figure out who. Someone is also selling their secrets to someone, so they're trying to figure all this out, but they're not too sure if they can trust each other and how that turns out. Oh my goodness. Now I will say, I did guess some of the things in this, but it was fine because I just loved the overall story. I was mostly here for the ride, the suspense, the creepy vibes, and I personally loved it. All right, I feel like you're probably going to see this on a lot of people's lists this year, but I mean, it is, I feel, so worth the hype, and that is A Dowry of Blood. This is a bit of a retelling of Dracula's Brides in a way, and we know immediately that the character we are following is killing Dracula. She has written these letters to Dracula kind of explaining how she got in the situation that she did as his bride and how that affected her and how things began to change and basically then the downfall of that situation. And it really is, it isn't so much a story about the brides themselves. It is a story about an abusive relationship and coming to terms with that and finding a way out, what it's like to lose yourself in that situation, and what it's like to come to a realization that that is happening. It is about manipulation. It is about gaslighting. It is a story about finding strength when you feel like you want to just let go in a way. So I think this is much more of a love story to one's self and healing and growing and becoming your own hero in a way. It does a good job because it's not just like the character realizes that this is happening and like figures and like deals with it. It is very much a back and forth because that is realistic to an abusive relationship. There are the highs and the lows, and the highs keep them coming back. So this was just absolutely fascinating. I loved hearing about their travels and just the relationships that they build and how the different aspects of the relationships work into this and the downfall of it. It's also poetically written. There's something about this writing style that is just beautiful to read, but it's not like super flowery necessarily, and it's not overly pretentious, but something about it is just really sophisticated and lovely. So I would say that this is worth the hype. I think that this is a really original take on this type of story as well. I'm gonna lie, these top three, I had a really hard time choosing like the order of which I was going to say them, because honestly, I just love all of these so much, and they just really shocked me and took me by surprise with how much I enjoyed them, especially because I don't think I planned on loving any of these, and they've become my favorite reads of the year. The first one I have is The 10,000 Doors of January. I went into this thinking, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. The writing is a little flowery at times. It's over descriptive at times. I don't know. I love this so much. I love worlds in which there are doors that open up to other worlds. I love that, and I need more of that. This is about a girl whose father is kind of away all the time. He's out traveling all the time, and she like accidentally manifests this door one day and realizes that she has some sort of ability to do this, but she is kind of told like, no, like it didn't happen type thing. No, you're losing your mind. And her caretaker decides that like she needs to be taken care of. Well, of course, we find out that there are these magical doors. We're also getting a different point of view of another young woman who finds a door one day, meets a gentleman, and kind of spends the rest of her life looking for this door again to see him again. And all the adventures that she goes on in finding all these different doors and the different worlds that they go to. So I loved seeing the different points of views. We have the one from like the present day and how she is like running for her life, trying to figure out what's going on. There are all kinds of people after her and she's not 100% sure why. There's also this book that she has found and it's about these stories about this woman and the adventures that she has, and we're trying to figure out how they're connected. But I loved hearing about the different worlds. I loved the relationships that are built in this. It is really beautiful. It has a slight romance in it, but the overall romance, I think, is with the love of traveling and finding new worlds and words and foods and people. And it's just so lovely. This book is magic. It is magic in and of itself. And I don't even know how else to describe it. I just read this book and I felt transported myself and I felt like I was part of the story and I just loved it so incredibly much. And I feel like I saw some people talk about this when it first came out and then it was like not mentioned again. But it's amazing. I love it. It's fantastic. Another unpopular opinion, because I have made my friends read this and no one enjoys it but me, apparently. But here I am recommending it to you still, and that is The Last Final Girl. Really all about the final girl trope this year. I just really ate it up. And Stephen Graham Jones has Hard as a Chainsaw, which I think is also about final girls. But this one is his good shit. And I don't care what anyone says. I think what is most confusing to people is that this is set up like a movie script. And I love that shit. This is basically a parody of slasher films. And I fucking loved it because even though it's a parody and it is funny at times, it does not let down on the gore and the surprises and the plots and the twists and all this craziness that is happening. So this, as I said, is set up like a script. So we get scenes that like describe where it's like transition to, and then it's like a mask floating down a river, and then transition to someone doing this in their house, and then transition to this. And I could see why some people, it takes a while to get into the groove of it, but once you're in the groove, oh, it's unputdownable, and it's like a movie in your head, but like a really good one, okay? And if you love slasher films, this, you know, makes fun of them. Several people, but there is one main girl, and she goes to a school that is like known for having like all these different final girls. There's another girl who just like survived this whole mass murder, and now she is the most recent final girl, and she is going to be homecoming queen naturally. So the problem is her whole homecoming court just got slaughtered. And so she's kind of handpicking these like freaks and other final girls and whatnot to be part of her homecoming court. And it's all a little suspicious, especially because then the killer, who is known as Billie Jean and wears a Michael Jackson mask, is on the loose, chopping off every final girl that is on this homecoming court, literally chopping off. But again, does not let down in the gore. I love that there's like levels of mystery to this because you still don't really know who's under the mask and you're still trying to figure that out despite the fact that this is a bit of a parody. You can guess who it's going to be, but it's still so fun. It's such a good time and I love this so much. I recommend it to everyone, even though everyone continues to hate it. If you want a unique read and experience within a book, this is it. I think it is genius. I love the way that it's put together. I think it is absolutely fantastic. And I feel like if you've been watching my channel this year, you can probably guess what my #1 book pick of this year is. It's The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Why do I do this? I just love a book and I go all out for it. I gotta say, when people started hyping this up, I was a little hesitant because I saw just as many people saying that they DNF'd it, they thought it was boring, they hated the writing, they hated the characters, they thought it was pretentious. And maybe I just love that shit, you know? Maybe pretentious and over the top is for me. Who would have guessed? Those who don't know, this is basically about a young woman who makes a deal with the devil, essentially. And the deal is that she wants to get out of this small little village that she lives in. Women have like no rights. She's about to be married off and just really lose any freedom that she has left. And she really doesn't want it to happen. She wants to go travel. She wants to go do things. So she makes a deal with the devil to get out of this wedding and to also go travel and see things. The problem is no one will ever remember her. The moment they turn around, they will immediately forget her. So she can never connect with anyone. And at first, you know, that seems fine. It's whatever. But it gets her into some really complicated situations throughout history. And we follow some of the different timelines, you know, as she is going through history and getting up to modern day. Then we are jumping to modern day where she is, you know, doing the usual stuff that she does with her life. And then realizes that there's a guy who remembers her. And this changes everything because she has gone centuries without anyone ever connecting with her. And here is someone who can connect with her. And she doesn't know why this has happened. She is afraid that like something is going to happen to ruin this. And it is just lovely. It's like a little whirlwind romance moment, but it is about so much more than that. It is about life and living life and making connections and how that changes your life and the quality of your life. Because just going out and seeing things isn't going to make things better. You need more than that. You need connection. So I love this. I sobbed my eyes out like I knew it was coming. And I still sobbed my eyes out at the end because it was just so good. And maybe I love pretentious writing, and it is what it is. And I know there's been a lot of criticism about how this book dealt with the different parts of history and the fact that like Addie doesn't do things in certain parts of history and they're not really touched on. And I get that. I do. I think of this more as kind of a romance and about connecting with people than a more serious matter, to be honest. So just know that there is a lot of critique around this book around that, but so much. I love it. Oh, I really want to get another copy to annotate because all of the copies that I currently have are all some sort of like special edition or from somewhere. So I feel like I need to get just one that I can end up annotating at some point because I love this book so much. I do have one more because this one took me by surprise, like to the point where this made me like contemplate everything. I couldn't stop thinking about this book. It impacted me so hard. But the only reason I'm not really including this in my top 10 is because I don't think this book is going to be for everyone. And I don't see it impacting everyone the way that it did me. It kind of like snuck up on me and hit me harder in the feels than I was, like took my breath away, winded me. Because of how just connected I unfortunately felt to the story. But that is The Violent Season. And again, I don't think this is going to necessarily be for everyone. There's going to be some people that read this and be like, why the hell was she hyping that up? But this, the synopsis of this book does it absolutely no justice. It's basically like there's this urban legend that in this town every November, like everyone comes down with this like sickness where they're like bloodthirsty and they just want to like murder people. And that's mostly because like terrible things have happened to people during this time. And we follow one girl, her mother was murdered the year before. And she was brutally murdered in her home. And it is kind of about her, like, how she has handled that throughout the year. How she's kind of, like, anticipating things going awry this year, this upcoming year around that time. And basically how she really believes that this myth is, like, coming to... this urban legend is coming to ruin her life, essentially. It talks a lot about how she spends time with her best friend and how she's, like, in love with him, and they have this back and forthness where, like, she chases him and he makes her, and anyway, What this story is actually about is about the season of depression and how depression can just totally change a person and how that really affects someone, and not just like mentally, but on the outside at times. It is also about an abusive relationship and coming to terms with an abusive relationship and finding out like the power struggles in that and getting out of that. There is a romantic plot in this that is, I think, takes a backseat to a lot of other serious topics going on. And I get the point of it because it is kind of to show how she comes to terms with the fact that one relationship is abusive and the other one not so much, and how it's kind of a wake-up call. So I enjoyed seeing the two dynamics in that. But again, this is much more about a story of depression. It's also about like suppressing your guilt in certain situations, and at other times using that guilt to really like feel down on yourself. So, oh god, this story is just like, if you are in the right mind, I would say give it a try, because it was just fucked me up. So those are my most surprising and best reads of 2021. Here's to hoping 2022 has even better reads, honestly, because I feel like I was in such a slump and read a lot of really mediocre things in 2021. So I think instead of living to the hype of everything else that's going around, I'm just going to read books that intrigue me. I'm not following the same set of rules as everyone else because they all hate these things. Let me know some of your favorite reads from 2021 down below. Hope you liked this video. Don't forget to subscribe to see future videos from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!